We will look at the stock valuation, chapter 11. First, I will show you the finance diamond and common stock review of features, valuation using dividends with constant growth, and valuation using dividends with uneven growth, and risk and stock valuation, multiplier models, problems, and a quick wrap up. So as you remember, the finance diamond, we have savers and the borrowers and financial institutions, the financial markets. We already look at the present value and future value formulas, perpetuity, annuity formulas, return formulas, risk measurements as a toolbox. And we look at the financial statements, 10K, 10Qs, and other financial statements and financial statement items. Now we look at the valuation of stocks. Dividends is distributed from the company earnings, and the payout ratio is the dividends over earnings per share, and earnings per share is calculated as net income divided by number of shares is equals to earnings per share. So payout ratio is equal the dividends paid divided by earnings per share. So cash dividends and stock dividends cause a downward price adjustments, and the stock splits change the number of shares outstanding, and it also lowers the price of each stock. Stock repurchase means that buy back the stocks available in the market, and it increases the earnings per share. How? By buyback programs, the number of shares available in the market is reduced, and it increases the earnings per share because the denominator of this equation, this ratio is decreased, and the overall the ratio is increased. Earnings per share is increased, and it causes the stock price increase. So the value of an asset is the present value of the future cash flows. As you may remember, time 0, time 1, and time n. We have dividends payments, a dividend payment at time 0, dividend payment at time 1, and dividend payment in time t. We just look at the present value of these dividends and find the current value of the stock. So how can we do that? If we have no growth in the dividend payments, all the dividend payments are same, equal amount, it will be very easy to calculate the present value of the stock, and the calculation is present value of the stock at time 0 is equals to dividend, it's important, dividend at time 1 over cost of equity, right? So what if we have a growth on the dividends? So if we have constant dividend growth model, the next formula is we already know the baseline dividend payment in time 0, and we have constant growth rate for infinite amount of time, and we find the numerator should be dividend paid at time 0 multiplied by constant growth rate divided by cost of equity multiplied by growth rate. It gives us the stock price at time 0. Same formula. So valuation using dividends with constant payment. Let's have an example. This is the example. So we have dividend at time 0 is $1, and we have return on equity is 10%, growth rate is 6%. How can we find the dividend paid in time 1? It will be easy. You just multiply by $1, which is dividend paid in time 0, multiplied by the 1 plus growth rate. This is growth rate. The dividend paid in time 1 is 1.06. How can we calculate the present value of the stock? By looking at the dividend 1. The formula is P0 equals dividend 1 over return on equity minus growth rate. So a dividend 1 is 1.06 divided by what is the return on equity? It's 10%, 0.10. What is the growth rate? 6%. So we have 4% at the denominator, 0.04. The numerator is 1.6%, 1.06. So simple calculation, 1.06 over 0.04, which is 26.5. So this graphic just shows us the per share dividend. As you see, the dividend is not constant, it's just growing through time. And it was $1 at time 0, and it increases exponentially. And as we have the dividend payments, it's non-linear, and the per share price of stock is calculated by this formula, and you will find at time 0, it is 26.5 at time 0. Okay, valuation using dividend with constant growth. As you remember, we have dividend time 0 and 1 plus growth rate divided by return on equity minus a growth rate, which gives us the present value of stock at time 0. The only important thing here is that you need to remember you're just finding discounted cash flows, time 0, time 1, and time n. You're just discounting dividend payments to time 0. Okay, and same formula. Let me clear here. Okay, what do we have? Okay, so return equity, just the same formula, and just we just manipulate this formula and find return equity. How? We just take the denominator from here to the left-hand side, and the return equity minus the growth rate is equal to dividend at time 0 multiplied by 1 plus G. G is the growth rate divided by P0. P0 is the price of stock at time 0. So what is the cost of equity? Cost of equity is equals dividend. Okay, dividend time 0 at time 0 multiplied by 1 plus G over P0 plus growth rate. Okay, so this is the calculation. Okay, we have dividend payment is $1 at time 0. Growth rate is 6% divided by P0. This is the price for time 0 plus 6% growth rate, which equals to 10%. 10% is the RE, cost of equity. Okay, valuation using dividends, uneven dividend growth rate. Sometimes we have growth rate, but it's not constant. So at time 1, this growth rate is maybe 25%, and time 2 lower growth rate. So we don't have a constant growth rate, uneven dividend growth rates. So we can fit the curve to get the 6%. So it's a kind of curve, and we have different scale of growth rates, but we have when we have a line, and we have approximate growth rate. So let's solve a problem 1. Suppose Hybrid Corporation recently paid a dividend of 0.68 per share. This is the dividend payment recently. Okay. And if its equity cost of capital 10%, let's write the given numbers. So we have equity cost of capital is 10%, okay, and I think dividend 0 is 0.68, and the dividends are expected to grow 8.4%. The growth rate, I try to, okay, Okay, growth rate is 0.084, and expected growth rate push 8.4% per year in the future. Estimate the value of target stock. Everything is given. We know the formula. Price 0 is given dividend paid at time 1. Time 1 divided by, okay, let me write again. Okay, 0 is 1 divided by return equity cost of capital minus growth rate. So how can we find dividend 1? Dividend paid in time 1 is equals dividend paid in time 0 multiply 1 plus growth rate. So let's see the solution. Okay. Okay. The solution is, so we have 0.68 dividend times 0. So we multiply, this is dividend paid times 0, 1 plus growth rate, which is 1.084. So we have 0.7371 is paid dividend at time 1. So price 0 is equals to dividend time 1 return equity minus growth rate. What was the return equity is, okay, sorry, return equity is 10%, 0.10 minus, what is the growth rate? 0.084. And price 0 is $46.07 times 0. All we are doing is just we just discount the dividend payments, and as you remember, times 0 times n, and we just discount dividend payments to time 0 and find price at time 0. Second problem, ABC Corporation just paid a yearly dividend 1.25, and you expect dividends to grow by about 1%. Okay. Just paid, this is the critical. Just paid means dividend 0 is 1.25, and growth rate G is 0.01. You know, other firms with similar risk earn 9% per year. How much should you be willing to pay for share EBC? So what is dividend 1? The dividend paid in time 0 is 1.25 multiplied by the 1 plus growth rate. What is the growth rate? The growth rate is given as 10%. So you should find dividend paid in time 1, which is 1.2625 paid in at time 1. So how can we find the P0? It's easy. We already defined the dividend paid in time 1, which is 1.2625 as a, we put in numerator, and denominator we have equity cost of capital minus growth rate. It's given 9%, and the growth rate is 1%. So we have 8% in the denominator, and the numerator is 1.2625, and we find 15.78 as stock value at time 0. Okay. Valuation using dividends with constant growth. How will an investor decide whether to buy or sell stock? So she will value the stock using her own expectations on required rate of return and dividends. Sometimes we have required rate of return, but sometimes you don't have. You need to calculate. In some situations, you need to calculate or expect some ratio, a required rate of return ratio, and dividends. If her expectations were substantial difference, she might conclude that the stock was overpriced or underpriced. So finally, if let's say Apple stock or Tesla, you have dividend payments for now, and you have a growth rate for dividends for Tesla, like let's say 10%, and you are looking at the so basically the formula is dividend 1 over return on equity minus growth rate. So you want to calculate whether the Tesla or Apple stock is overvalued or undervalued. You have to find or figure out the dividend payment at time 1 and the cost of equity and growth rate. So you need some projection for next year or for the future, and also you need to calculate return on equity for specific stock. So based on your assumption or expectation, let's say you find let's say 150, but the stock price, based on your assumption and calculation, you find P0 is 150, but the current stock price is 100. So you're saying the current price of stock is lower than the calculated stock price, which is underpriced, and vice versa. If the current price is, let's say, 200 and you find 150, you're saying this is overpriced. So based on that calculation, you will buy or sell. Sell means short the stock, right? Okay, valuation using dividend with uneven growth. So dividends may not be paid at a constant rate. So usually it happens. An example: in some situations, we find no dividends, large initial dividend payments, declining growth in dividends. It's getting complex, or stable rate of growth. Let's look at this example. So let's say this is a B, C stock, and for the first year, it doesn't give any cash payment, 0 dividend. Time 2, 0, 0, 0. At time 3, just 10 cents. At time 4, which is the year 4, just 20 cents. Year 5, 35, 50, 60, 66, and so on and so forth. And when you look at the percentage change in dividends, which is growth rate, you see the growth rate of dividends is from 10 cents to 20 cents, which is 100%. For the 5th year, you need to look at the 4th year dividend and the 5th year dividend and find the percentage increase in dividends, which is 75%. And when you look at the time 6 and the dividend paid in year 5 is 35 cents, and dividend paid in year 6 is 50 cents. And what is the growth rate? The growth rate is 42.9%. And year 7, you look at the dividend paid in 60 cents, and for the prior year, it paid only 50 cents. What is the growth rate of dividends is just 20%. And for the 8th, 9th, and 10th year, you will see the growth rate is 10%. It's constant, but it's constant only after the beginning of 8th year. But before time 8, we have different uneven growth rates. How can we solve such question? Let's try. Okay, so keep in mind the present value of the stock is the present value of all its future cash flows. Yes, so how can we find the value of stock that has uneven growth rate of dividend? First, you look at the growth rates, okay? So when you look at the growth rates, you will see, hey, this is just 10% increase after 7 at the end of 7th year. So we have constant growth rate here, but we have uneven growth rate before time 8. So we cannot use our formula, which is P0 equals dividend 1 over return on equity minus growth rate, right? This is constant growth rate. We can only use this formula for after 8 years. So we need to manually calculate here, and then after 7th year, and we need to calculate price by looking at constant growth rates and then add the value in a single number. What I mean here is that just let's simplify the question. Okay, let me explain another way. Okay, I will explain this way. So let's look at, just don't look here. Just forget about the after 8 years. Only look at year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, how can we find present value of stocks for cash dividends paid in year 0, in year 1, 0, in year 2, 0, in year 3, 10, 20, 35, 50, and 60. So we just simply find the present value calculation. How? We have dividend payment at time 1 is 0, time 2, 0, time 3, 10%, 20%, 35%, 50%, 60%, and find the present value of these dividends, right? So we have return on equity is 12%. So just find the present value of time 1, time 2. For time 1, the dividend over 1 plus, this is 1 plus return equity 1. This is 1 plus return of equity power of 2 for time 3, time 4, time 5, time 6, time 7. So we find the present value of the cash flows for different years. So what is the present value of these dividend payments, which is 92 cents? Okay, so we find first 7 years present payments, but we have dividend payments after 7th year, constant growth rate, and it goes infinity. How can we find? By using cash flows time 8, time 9, and time 10, or so on and so forth. So you look at the dividend payment for the price 7, right? For the price 7 equals dividend payment 8 over 1 over return equity minus growth rate. So dividend payment paid in time 8 is 66 cents over return equity is 12%, and the growth rate is 10%, right? So P7, the price for time 7, is $33. But we want to discount price 7 to price 0. How can we discount price 7 to price 0? So we have $33 in time 7, and same, we discount by using return equity, which is 12%, 7 years. So this is the present value of the price at time 7, which is 14.92. Okay, now we are summing up two components. The first component is 92 cents, which is discounted cash flows for 1 to 7 years. This is 1 to 7 years. This is for 8 to infinity, right? So I mean, this is discounted rate for the second part, okay? And when you sum up two values, you will find 15.84 for the value of P0, okay? Okay, risk and stock valuation, how to get our discount rate. So in prior examples, I gave you the cost of equity, but in many circumstances, we need to find or we need to estimate cost of equity. How can we do that? So cost of equity is the required rate of return to induce investor to purchase a particular security. So cost of equity can be obtained by the risk and return formula, capital asset pricing model. How can we estimate or find cost of equity? So we have risk-free rate, return on risk-free rate, market rate, and risk-free rate, and beta. Beta is the stock beta. Every stock has different beta. So a security market line represents all the required returns associated with each level of market risk. We will be using this formula to find return on equity. So we already know risk-free rate, market rate of return, and this formula, and we estimate and find, not estimate, we find by using this capital asset pricing model, find the cost of equity. Okay, let's maybe it will be much more clear when we solve the problem 3. Suppose a company pays $1.10 dividend that has risen at an annual growth rate 5.4%. So suppose the company pays, okay, and the stock beta is 80% or 0.8. If US Treasury bill of 6-month duration offered a risk-free rate 3.5%, and the market return is 9.5%, what will be the value of the company's stock? So first we find return on equity, and then we try to find price 0 by, again, same, by using dividend paid in time 1 over return on equity minus growth rate. Okay, let me clear here. Okay, how can we find return on equity? We already have capital asset pricing model, which gives us this formulation. We have risk-free rate, which is a US Treasury bill of 6-month duration, 3.5%. We know this. We know beta, which is 80%. We know market return, which is 9.5%. We know risk-free rate, which is 3.5%. Let's put the numbers in this formulation, and you will get this, and you will find the cost of equity is 8.3% for that specific stock. So how can we find the price of stock at time 0? So we know this is P0. So we know dividend paid in time 0, which is 1.10 multiplied by 1 plus growth rate, which is, what was the growth rate? Growth rate is 5.4. You find dividend paid in D1 over growth rate, return on equity minus growth rate. Return on equity, we just calculate the return on equity, which is 8.3%. That equals 0.083 minus the growth rate, 0.054. And we find the value of stock at time 0 is 39.98. So if the current price is higher than 39.98, the stock is overvalued, and vice versa. Okay. So in some situations we don't have dividends. Some stocks doesn't pay any dividend. So how can we calculate the price of a stock even we don't have? What if we don't have any dividend payments? So we can look at the multipliers, multiplier models, and the dividend discount model values a stock based on a forecast of future dividends, but affirm future dividends carry a tremendous amount of uncertainty. Yes. And non-dividend paying stocks, some stocks doesn't pay any dividend. So many companies do not pay dividends, thus the dividend discount model must be modified. Okay. And we have multipliers for company or industry, and we will use these multipliers. What are the multipliers that we can use to value a stock, to find the valuation of a stock? The first one is price PE ratio, which is stock price over earnings per share. Earnings per share is the net income divided by number of shares. Stock price we try to find. So price, the PE ratio is price to earnings ratio is equal stock price over earnings per share. So we already have, even the company doesn't distribute any dividend. We have net income from the income statement, and we already know the number of shares, and we easily find the earnings per share. We don't know stock price, and we can estimate or find PE ratio. How can we find PE ratio? It can you can do in different ways. The first way is you just historically go back and just take the average of the historical PE ratio for a specific company, or you can look at the industry PE ratio, let's say tech companies. So if you look at the Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and other tech companies and take the average, you can find PE ratio, and you can apply if you're or valuing a tech company, and you try to find the stock price that specific tech company, and you can just take the average of the other 10 companies. You can find stock price. For specific example, let's say you try to find the value of let's say one tech company, which can be let's say let me think about we can think about a tech company which can be, let's say, Slack. Okay, let's say we try to find the value of Slack and we don't know, and think about, let's assume we don't have any dividend payments. How can we find the value of stock price, the value of Slack stock price? So we can look at, maybe you can look at the other tech companies, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and you take the average and find a price to earnings ratio and apply this ratio multiplied by earnings per share for the Slack company and find the stock price. Okay, for example, EPS, earnings per share, is 2.45. Okay, and appropriate PE ratio is, let's say you find PE ratio is 13. Okay, so it's very easy. So you just multiply 13 by 2.45 and you will find 31.85. Okay, another multiply is PS ratio, which is price to sales ratio. The sales per share is the you just sales divided by number of shares. You will find sales per share, and same the value of the price. So the PS ratio is stock price over sales per share. You know sales per share, you know, or estimate the PS ratio. You're just looking for the stock price, just to multiply these two values, and you will find the stock price, which is which is sales per share multiplied by PS ratio, you will find the stock price. BP ratio, another multiply model is you can use price over a book value of equity per share. How can we find the book value of equity per share? You just have the book value of equity multiplied by the number of shares. You will find the book value of equity per share, and you're looking for the price by applying a PB ratio. Same PB ratio equals price, stock price over book value of equity per share. You know this value, you estimate or find this value, just multiply and find the stock price. Okay. How can we find these ratios like PB or PS or PE? So we have PE ratio, PS ratio, PE, PS, and PB ratio. How can we find? As I said before, you can use historical average of specific firm, or you can use industrial average for a specific firm. Okay, so let's solve the problem 4. Suppose IBM latest earnings per share is 12.008, which is D0, I guess, and you want to use an industrial average PE ratio, which is PE ratio is 12.05. The estimated IBM credit price. Okay, what could be the estimated price? Just multiply two values and find the stock price, right? Okay, PE multiplied by EPS, which is 145.56. Problem 5, suppose IBM latest sales per share is reported 78.38, and historical average of the price sales ratio is 1.83. What is the estimated price? Just say similar. You multiply two values and find 143.42. Problem 6. Suppose IBM latest book value per share is reported 19.76 and historical average of its price book ratio is 7.77. Same, you multiply two values and find the estimated price per share. Okay, so wrap up. We quickly look at the finance diamond, common stock review of features, valuation using dividends with constant growth, uneven growth, risk and valuation, risk and stock valuation, multiplying models. We solved a couple of problems. Please read your notes, PowerPoint slides, chapter 8, 9, 10, and 11. And you will have an exam 2 on Blackboard at 2 p.m. The exam only includes chapter 8, 9, 10, and 11. And before exam, please go and finish the mind map exercises, quizzes, video reviews, PowerPoint, and flashcards. And also look at the exercises at the end of each chapter of our book. Plus, let me write, plus book exercises. Thank you for your attention today. See you next time.